Hi, I'm Harvey Phillips, and I'd like to tell you some short stories about cars. Well, not just any cars, but family cars and personal cars and cars I've leased, and one car I used for several months, but it wasn't mine. 1948 DeSoto. Now, cars of this era had hood ornaments. The ornament on the DeSoto was called the Lucite Goddess, and it lit up at night. This is also one of the first cars with an automatic transmission. It was called fluid drive. I didn't call it that. I called it fluid slush. It took about 20 seconds from 0 to 60 miles per hour. Now, some of today's cars can do 0 to 60 miles an hour in less than 3 seconds. This is a 1950s or so Crosley and a 1950 or so Chevy panel truck. Now, Dad owned a butcher shop in Cleveland, Ohio, and I drove the Crosley for local short-range deliveries, and the panel truck was used for deliveries out to Cleveland's west side. The Crosley was not exactly a sports car. It could do, with a little luck, maybe 35 miles an hour. I think my moped could go that fast. Isn't this a great-looking car? This is from the 1950s, and it was made by the Kaiser Frazer Company. Now, this Kaiser was my dad's car. The car came in several different model styles. This Pix looks similar to the one we had, except ours was blue. On the second day we had the car, I drove it and had a fender bender. I expected Dad to give me a lecture about my not-so-good driving skills. Nope. All he said was, "Are you okay?" And I never heard anything more about the accident. A 1953 Ford convertible. Yes, this one was really mine, and that's the car, not just some similar car grabbed off the internet. Now, this Ford was my very first car out of high school. Actually, I wanted a Chevy from that year. My Uncle Ed and I went to the dealer store. I immediately spotted the car I liked. The salesperson was at the rear of the store. He saw us come in and look at the car. He didn't seem busy with anyone, but he never came over to greet us. After a while, I looked at my uncle and said, "Let's go." Now, the Ford dealership was just a short walk away from the Chevy dealer. The Ford salesman came right over and showed us the cars. I couldn't keep my eyes off the red convertible, but it was much more expensive than the other cars. My uncle watched me for a while. He said, "You really like that one?" "Yes," I said back, "but it's awfully expensive." He waited a moment, and then he said, "Harvey, you're only young once." Bless you, Uncle Ed. Now, at that time, we made our cars look more personal by removing the hood ornament and adding detail to the car. I painted the rear panel design black. To make cars appear faster, we used block kits to lower the back of the car. The gal standing by the car is my cousin Marilyn. Now, here's a nice 1954 Jaguar XK 150 convertible. Actually, it wasn't the one I used. I snagged this one off the net. But I didn't own this car. Its owner asked if I could take care of it for several months while he had overseas business. At that time, 0 to 60 miles per hour in 8 seconds was really fast. As I mentioned previously, that old 48 DeSoto took over 20 seconds. 1958 Volkswagen Beetle. After my 4-year stint in the Navy, I moved to Long Branch and stayed with my mom in an apartment building known as Scott Towers. Our third-floor apartment overlooked the Atlantic Ocean, and I could see all the way to Asbury Park. The two Beetles on the right are the actual car. The one on the left is from the internet. Now I found this used VW at a car lot in Long Branch. I'd heard of VWs, but this car was the first Beetle I'd ever seen. I knew the craftsmanship of the German people came with high regard, and the Beetle had a good reputation for reliability. My Beetle lasted a long time. 1964 Peugeot 404 sedan. I met my wife Joan at Monmouth College, now Monmouth University. We got married in 1964 and bought a Peugeot for our honeymoon. The picture on the right is not the original car. The other picture with my wife standing next to it is the actual car. This was our first night together at a little cottage in Mystic, Connecticut. 1970 Datsun two-door hatchback. Not really sure when we got the used Datsun. It had many miles. This car is similar, but not the one we had. Our original was brown. Now I don't recall why we put it up for sale, but we sold it to a nice young couple who intended to drive it to California. I told them it was regularly serviced at the dealer, but I couldn't guarantee it would cover the distance. I hope it did. 1973 Carmen Ghia. Joan clears out the garage, and the Carmen Ghia peeks out behind her. We call the car our Italian VW. The body was styled in Italy and built by German coach builders. Like our VW, it turned out to be a reliable car, at least until the floor rusted out. It looks like a spiffy sports car, but it's not. 0 to 60 miles per hour in over 17 seconds is not much better than the old 48 DeSoto. (1976) BMW. This BMW is not a picture of the original car. Our car was black, and it was the personal car of the BMW dealer. We bought it from him. The BMW was a pleasure to drive. It was a reliable car, and we had it serviced by the original owner, who still had good feelings about it. Unfortunately, with Joan and I in the front seats and 3 children in the back, we were hit head-on by a young driver. With the front of our car raised high, I looked down and saw the other car's passenger crash through the front windshield and slide across the hood. I don't know about his injuries. I do know all 5 of us were not severely injured. But here's a special safety note on that experience. At that time, our then 6-year-old Courtney was using a specially ordered safety device that looked like a tunnel of firm foam. Courtney sat within the safety seat. Though the unit was belted into the back seat, Courtney was not. While I was driving, she climbed out of the seat, ready to join us in the front of the car. We yelled at her to get back in the seat. With much angry persuasion, she did finally crawl back, and moments later, we were in that head-on collision. Several weeks later, I went back to the BMW dealer to find another used car. Turned out the dealer was really angry with me for wrecking his car. 1976 Plymouth station wagon. It served its purpose as a carry-all car. Can you see the mattresses piled on top of it? But we didn't keep the Plymouth very long. It had a dangerous safety issue. Sometimes when I made a left turn, it would stall out right in the middle of the intersection. If there was a recall, we never got it. 1980 Rover 4-door sedan. This isn't the car. I searched the web and I couldn't find the model we had. The Rover was touted as a safety car and came with fog lights, a pop-out windshield, and other features I don't recall. It was a totally unreliable car. It was always in the shop. Even within the warranty period, it blew the head gasket twice. After warranty, it blew it again, and another head gasket. That service was very expensive. Finally, I decided to replace the head gasket myself, but the torque wrench and other metric tools were more expensive than the head gasket. No takers for resale, but a family member asked for the old car and I sold it for $1. I told her about the problems, but she wanted the car anyhow. I heard later that she quickly got rid of it. 1986 Buick 4-door. Our son Eric, about 12 years old at that time, set up a roadside vegetable stand. My wife Joan was, I think, his first customer. The front end of the Buick sneaks into this Pix. In the other Pix, our eldest daughter Courtney practiced parallel parking prior to her driver's test. The Buick was a nice-looking car, but needed careful driving. In wet weather, the back end tended to slide out. The Buick met its end when a police car pulled away from the curb to make a U-turn. He careened out of the space without looking, pulled right in front of us, and we hit him at low speed. A very embarrassed older officer came over to apologize. The Buick wasn't really damaged much, but I used the accident as an excuse to get rid of it. 1986 Mazda 626. Not really sure of the date on this 626. This is not the car. The original was gold. It was advertised in the paper by a lady in a nearby town. I was satisfied with the test drive, but the interior smelled of cigarette smoke. I figured it would all air out, but it did not. I got sick from the smell and soon sold the car. 1997 Lexus 250, totaled November 2000. Our Lexus was one of my favorite cars. This was the first car I had ever leased. I like it so much, I bought it at the end of the lease. After 2 years, it was still in mint condition. And this car? Well, I'll tell you about that in a moment. One day while fixing the gutters on our house, the aluminum ladder buckled and I fell. Fortunately, I fell onto 2 wrecked canoes stacked against the house. But unfortunately, I bounced right off the canoes and landed on a ground rod that went right up my leg. I did not want to get into the Lexus and bloody up the leather, but a large blanket solved that problem. Oh, the picture. Have had very few accidents during my long years of driving. In this case, a line of cars to my right began to move. I thought the light had changed, but the light of cars were making a right-hand turn. I moved also, right through the red light and across a busy highway. We were T-boned by a dump truck and pushed right into a nice Mercedes. Joan needed the jaws of life to pry open the door, and she had to suffer for many weeks with fractured ribs. My injuries were minor. '99 Avalon. Another favorite car. Even after 150,000 miles, I still wanted to keep it. but a fixable, though expensive repair would have cost more than the value of the car. Goodbye, Avalon. (2000) Honda Prelude. No, this is not the car that replaced the Avalon. This Honda belonged to my daughter Tracy. She had business in California and drove the car back to New Jersey. I bought it from her by paying off the balance of her loan. But she loved the car so much, she wanted it back. And that brings us to the end of the line. Our last two cars were both Camrys. 2014 Toyota Camry and a 2018 Toyota Camry. Both very nice cars. But in 2021, at 87 years old, it was time to give up driving. I had lost feeling in my legs, and one day my foot got caught under the brake. Not once, but 4 times on the same day. Several incidents, but we got home with no accidents. I parked the car and never drove again. And that's the end of my car stories. From the 1948 DeSoto to the 2018 Camry, that makes 20 cars. Bye.